This is a test. I am testing right now. We are not dropping frames, that's good. I don't know how the bit rate is and all these things. Hopefully good enough to do a Q&A without me having to go to the office. But you never know, because you know what? I didn't change anything since last time. So we'll see. So, yeah, I see no dropped frames. I am running at 1000 bit rate, so but that should be enough bit rate to do a little picture in the corner. What's going on, people? How are things? When is the stream going to be? In 2 hours and 15 minutes. By enjoying the new place? Yeah, mostly. The thing is, all my stuff's in Florida still, so I'm kind of running minimal here. Like, I don't have my regular computer and all that, which is why this looks different. Hey, look, I've been streaming for 2 minutes and I'm already banning people. Cool. Cool. How great. I actually don't know. On this webcam, I don't know where the mic is located. Maybe it's like on the bottom, which would then, no? I don't know. I don't know how to ensure maximum audio quality. Well, you know, I didn't really want to do anything on this stream. This is just the test stream. So, given that it's working, maybe it's time to end the test stream and we'll just come back later for the real stream. Try giving the lens a wipe. Well, we can try that. We can use an official lens wipe. And I doubt it's going to help anything. I think you're probably not correct about that, but you know, maybe. Maybe. There we go. It actually did help. Oh, okay. somewhere close to where I wiped. Well, I don't exactly know. Like, there's no visible microphone input. Here, we'll do a test. Okay, I'm going to tap different places and you can tell me where the tap is the loudest, all right? So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What was the loudest? Or were they all horrible? 2.5. 3. 3 is the closer. Well, that's like that's the exact middle, right under the thing. It's like, what worries me is, like, I don't see any actual microphone input anywhere. So is it just muffled because it's way inside the thing with no... Yeah, you know what? It could be that there's 2 mics in each speaker area. And that was the loudest because you got like equal input on both or something. That could be. Can I recommend a laptop good for programming? No, all laptops are terrible. It's time for me to get a new one because this one's power supply just died for the 3rd time. You know, CES just happened and everybody announced their new laptops for the year, and I don't know how long it's going to be before you could actually buy them. But this year is interesting because there's been a shift in laptop size. Both Razer and Asus and maybe a couple other people are doing 16-inch models that are actually fucking 16 by 10 aspect ratio. Thank God, finally. So that will be better. I'm sure they're still going to be trash in other ways, but they're actually going to have 16 by 10 screens. And maybe slightly more battery life because they'll be bigger enclosures. They're still going to not have trackpad buttons. They're still going to have trash keyboards, and they're still probably going to have displays that are too glossy. This is a thing. I was looking at review sites. Nobody ever tells you how glossy is the display. Like, it's the most important thing, and nobody gives a shit. Like, maybe the audio is too high. Is it clipping? They do sell power supplies separately. Well, you can't get them off the website in any reasonable time, so I order cheap Chinese ones on Amazon, and then those burn out quickly. If they weren't jerks, then they wouldn't have a proprietary power connector. Oh, well, here's the thing that I didn't realize. I'm not used to it, but this laptop actually supports USB-C charging. And the reason I'm not used to it is because previous Razers did not support USB-C charging, but had USB-C ports. So I didn't even think to try it, but then I tried it on a whim because the stupid Linux laptop that I have here is USB-C, and it worked. So I didn't actually have to buy another stupid proprietary Razer power supply, but I did anyway. 16-inch sounds heavy. I don't know. It's like it's funny because it's really just a regression to what we used to do in the old days. Like 15 and 16-inch were the sizes in the old days, maybe 16 usually. 14 wasn't a thing, that was too small because the screen was too small. And 16 by 10 was, you know, when monitors went widescreen for desktops, that was the aspect ratio. The 16 by 9 trash ass aspect ratio, it was a bad thing that happened to laptops 20 years ago at this point, and they never recovered for a long time. Like, I don't understand what happened. There's a Q&A in 2 hours, yes. Lenovo P16. I just don't want to buy any more Lenovo's. I got burned by those ThinkPad X1 Extremes that I bought. They sucked so bad. I don't want to buy any more Lenovo's. Does the new Apple Silicon not pique my interest? Mac OS is complete trash for development. I can't use it. I'm sure the CPU is nice, but I just cannot use that operating system. It's horrible. It's for people who don't computer. And that's really saying something given that both Windows and Linux are also horrible, but Mac OS is so horrible that I simply cannot even use it. Whereas like both Windows and Linux, I can like manage somehow, right? How is 16:9 a bad ratio? Because it's horrible for text. You can't fit enough text. 16 by 10 is not that much better, but it's better. And it's also 16 by 9 is just a really weird ratio because like it's not tall enough for text, which is what you use the computer for most of the time if you're a programmer or browse the web, right? But then, uh, it's not really wide enough to fit two things side by side because then they're too narrow. It's just a really awkward aspect ratio. I mean, it's fine for videos, right? But for general computer use, it's really bad. Are there some other laptop design trends over the decades which have been bad? Yeah, almost all of them. Like laptop evolution has been driven by cost. And it's one of those things where the people buying them don't know what's good and what's not good. And so you don't really have any consistent driver toward quality in any way. So it's all like the things, well, it's not only cost, but it's all just number go up is what makes laptops go. So like, hey, my display is more nits. Who cares if it's 900 nits if it's fucking glossy anyway and you can't see anything and you get a headache when you use it? It's 900 nits, guys. It's like, fuck off. But they just don't, they're just bad at what they do. Everyone in laptop design is bad at what they do. Except Apple was good for a little bit when they started doing the new MacBooks, like way back when they were like, we're going to mill the aluminum case or whatever. For like 2 years, they were good at it. And that was the exception. You can install Linux on the MacBook. Well, I don't want to use Linux, but also I've heard that doesn't work that well anymore. Does it work better again? How's the game been going? It's been going good, lots of progress. Um, we just reached some major progress milestones lately. Um, it is possible now, actually, this is from a few weeks ago, but it is now finally possible to start playing the game from the beginning and have a somewhat coherent play experience all the way to the ending and to get to the ending and solve it. So that's good. So that is obviously a step toward being done. There's still a lot to do, but um, yeah. Yeah, like Razors have the tiny arrow keys, the tiny vertical arrow keys, like this. Both of these laptops that I'm using right now have this, right? And again, nobody fucking asked for that. It's being driven partially by cost because you fit the keyboard into more of a rectangle, um, and partially by this weird aesthetics that laptop designers have that doesn't actually make things better, right? They're like, oh, the keyboard looks nicer if it's all in a rectangle. It's just like, no, nobody wants that. We want the arrow keys, guys. It's hard to find a good 4x3 monitor. I mean, I thought 4x3 was coming back a little bit. Is that not the case? I thought it was. Something with keys. Yeah, I know, dude. Like, this is again, um, laptops have made keyboards shitty, partially to cut costs and partially to drop weight, right? But you should spend weight on experience quality. And keyboards, again, keyboards are primary to your experience quality when using a laptop. Like, because you will get injured if they are bad. Like, it's so important to have a good keyboard, and laptop designers don't care because they're bad at their job. Like, that's all that I could say. Any books I read over the break? I mean, I tried reading a few books and I didn't like any of them enough to get very far. Do I think large language models like ChatGPT will automate a lot of low-level programming and debugging? No. No, they won't. They can't. Like, this is the thing. It's all, when people say that, either they are scamming you or they don't know what they're talking about. Okay? Okay, here's the thing. There's so many things about this. Let me try and encapsulate why this is all complete nonsense, because people don't seem to get it. Like, if you go ask ChatGPT, try this sometime. Ask ChatGPT to tell you about some technical thing that exists. Like, tell me what are the research papers that summarize some topic or whatever. And what you'll get is things that sound like titles of research papers by authors who are maybe even real people, but they don't exist in their nonsense. And why is that? Because what ChatGPT is doing is not understanding your question and then searching its knowledge and returning information. It seems like that because that's what we want it to seem like. But all it's doing, it's just like a super Markov chain where it's putting together words probabilistically, right? That is literally all that's happening there. That is why it is called a language model, all right? So when you use something like that for code completion, all it is doing is stringing together symbols probabilistically to fill out what you have done. So now, sometimes that will result in things that are almost right. And you've probably seen on Twitter or something, somebody tweets, "Oh my God, it completed this thing and it does bubble sort or whatever," right? So first of all, that's cherry picked because you can do that 10 times and it won't work 9 of the times, right? But secondly, the only reason that that worked is because that's a piece of code that like shows up a million times in the exam. Well, not a million times, but like it's so much close to the statistical average of what is there, that the thing can reproduce it, right? Now, here's the thing though, okay? If you are writing code that is very close, like, okay, so what's it doing? You either give a description or you start typing some code. I've seen both versions, and it's like, let's fill out the body of code. If that can be done with a high degree of, like I was going to say high degree of accuracy, that's not even the right thing to say, but you kind of know what I mean, right? Like if that gets you pretty close to what you were trying to do, then what you were trying to do is by definition not that interesting. And why are you typing it? Because like everybody knew what this thing is that you're typing. So now once in a while we do that in programming. Like once in a while it's like, oh, here's some stupid function. I've written this a million times. I need to write it again. I'd prefer to call something, but we don't have it here or something, whatever reason, right? That happens sometimes, but that should be the vast minority of your programming time, okay? If it is not, you're writing bullshit code all the time, right? Yeah, like, okay, so going to information theory, right? The amount of information in a message is another way, or it's proportional to the amount of surprise that a reader will have when reading the message, right? If you send somebody a message and everybody could have predicted with 100% accuracy what was in that message before you sent it, then there's 0 bits of information in that message and it can be compressed down to 0 bits, right? And so another way of saying this is like if a large language model can print out the code that you were going to type, then there's very little information in that code, all right? Because it's predicting it from statistical, generalness. Now, on the other hand, the thing that actually ChatGPT does, okay, so there's 2 things that ChatGPT does, right? One is it refuses to answer your question because it's programmed by blue-haired people in San Francisco, right? But assuming you get past those filters, then it's just sort of riffing on the question, going off in different directions. So everything I just said a second ago was more like the code completion version, which is like there's one specific right answer and we're trying to converge on that. There's this other direction, which is just like, hey, we're starting with some text and riffing outward. And if you did it 10 times in fresh chats, you would get 10 different answers. Which again, ChatGPT does sometimes. It would do it a lot more if they didn't have filters on the front, right? Now, the thing about that is, how does that get you to a goal that you're trying to accomplish in programming? It like doesn't, right? You don't want to go outward. You want to like converge inward toward a correct answer. And so that mode of interaction is just the wrong one for programming. So all I would just say is, yeah, like if it helps, so okay, if it helps you write source code, then the source code you're writing probably isn't that good, right? It probably doesn't need to be written because it already exists a lot, or things very close to it already exist. But then, here's the other reasons why it doesn't matter. Like when you're programming, you don't spend that much time typing the source code, even if you're a very slow typist, right? Like the time you spend is designing, debugging, testing, and using, right? And those are all intertwined. Now, I do spend, when I'm on a roll, like you've seen this on a really good stream, I spend a decent proportion of my time typing code when debugging goes well or we don't have that many bugs. But that's rare, and it took me a long time to get to that point. And even then, I suspect if I measure what percentage of my time do I spend actually typing, it's got to be low, right? Because there's just not, like, if you type 50 words a minute, that's a moderate typing speed. How many minutes are in this, 60 minutes in an hour, right? So that's 3,000 words in an hour. A word is like 6 characters, right? So 18,000 characters an hour, 18 kilobytes. We're going to round that up to 20 kilobytes. We'll say you type a little bit faster, right? times 8 hours in a workday if you're not a millennial or a Zoomer. So um, that's 160K of source code per day that you would type if you were just typing the whole time, right? And I don't know how many lines that is, but let's say there's, I don't know, 50 bytes per line on average. Let's divide by 100 and multiply by 2. So that would be 3,000 lines of code a day. That actually sounds a little bit low if you were just typing. Maybe I messed up the math somewhere. But like, you would write, uh, so if you multiply that, let's just say that's 4,000 lines of code a day. That's a round number. 200 work days a year if you're a slacker. Um, so that's almost 1 million lines of code a year. That's 800,000 lines of code a year that you would type if you were just typing the whole time. All right. People don't produce anywhere near that much, right? Which is how you know they're not typing most of the time. So if you come along with this thing and you say, hey, here's this thing that saves typing, it's just not that helpful because most of the time you're not typing. Now, you could make a claim, which it would be foolish to make, but you could say, oh yeah, but a lot of the time is debugging, and this system will produce code that has fewer bugs. But it won't because it doesn't understand anything, right? You need a general intelligence system to understand what is being done in order to produce code that actually works in non-trivial scenarios that won't have bugs. And so all of this is just to say, I'm not saying someday AI systems won't be good at, producing software. I'm simply saying ChatGPT style things, language model style things are not going to be good at producing software. And anyone who tells you they are is not to be relied upon, right? Okay, I'm going to take a break and have breakfast and all this stuff. Raphael is saying you can remember two concrete projects where at least half of the programmers did mostly boilerplate with mild variation to implement a business spec. I mean, yes, that exists in the world, but like, that seems like a process error to me. Like, I mean, I've definitely seen that kind of programming, but like that kind of code, when you try to map a spec to code and you're just almost doing an in your mind machine translation, that stuff comes out really bad anyway. Like, I mean, I guess, so here's the thing, right? I guess you can run a business, especially if you're doing government contracts, that is based on that model. And, maybe a language model helps with something like that. But that is not, like, if your goal is to produce quality software, that is not going to help. And so, yeah, I guess I could refine it to say there's these edge cases where if your job was to produce low quality code to begin with, then yeah, maybe we can automate that job some more now. But like, we shouldn't be doing that, right? Like, that's a mistake, I think. There are tons of programmers on these projects that do mostly pattern matching. Yeah, but all of those things, like, you could have imagined on that kind of contract project that somebody with a little bit of vision could have stepped in like 10 years ago and come up with like a visual programming system or something that helps you produce the boilerplate a lot faster. Like, when it's that kind of boilerplate programming, like, typing code is just not the fastest way to do it, right? I mean, we saw this even from Microsoft, like in the late 90s or whenever this was, when it was like, here's your, does Microsoft still have a UI builder? Like, how do people make vanilla crappy Windows programs now, right? But it used to be, right, you were using MFC or whatever, and the design of the MFC is horrible. I don't know if it's this way still, but it was this way back then. For any button or any text form or anything that you, text input, anything that you wanted, you had to subclass a base class in C source code for each instance of a thing. It was ridiculous. And so that lent itself to extreme boilerplate programming to get anything done. And so you would use these UI builders to do this, right? But that was all trash code anyway. Like, that was all code that shouldn't have existed anyway, because you shouldn't have to subclass a button to instance a button. You know what I mean? And I hope they have fixed that since then. But yeah, so you know, if somebody brings up cases like that and says, but it'll help here, I'll just say like, yeah, but that just shouldn't be a thing. Like you're using, you know, you're using this automated system to help accelerate the trundling through a mistake that was made a long time ago. And it would have been better just to fix the mistake. And it still is better just to fix the mistake. All right. I'm going to sign off so I have time to eat breakfast and stuff. But the actual Q&A stream will be in an hour and 45 minutes. And we'll see. How interesting it is depends on how good the questions are. So we'll see how it goes. People got wild with subclassing things. Yeah, well, it's like anything. So this is why, so in the documentation for the programming language, I think you're in the beta, but for people who aren't, there's like a significant amount of the documentation says, don't go crazy misusing these language features for things that they're not good at. And the reason it says that is because that's the history of every feature in every programming language, right? So like subclassing, massively overused because you got all these programmers who were like, oh, this is the new paradigm, we're the new smart people, and we're going to do the cool new thing. And they subclass everything, or just even simpler stuff like that, like operator overloading in C++. Got so abused back in the day, you couldn't read programs because like every operator was used for something bizarre and you had no idea what it did, right? You're not in the beta. Okay, well, you're sad then. That's correct. What's the size of the beta? It's, I want to say 350 people, something like that. It's growing steadily, but I don't know how many of those are active. Like I don't track it. The number of active users is going up over time on average. I can tell that because the discussions just have more participation and I get more bug reports and stuff. I'm actually getting more bug reports lately than I can realistically field, which is rough. But yeah, it's going up. It's just I don't know what proportion of that 350 is active users, and I don't want to get into this culture of tracking things. So I'm just sort of ignoring that right now. Growing linearly? Not. It's growing a little bit faster than linearly because I loosen the policy over time of how I let people in. Yeah. All right, everyone. I'm taking a break. We'll be back for the language Q&A in now an hour and 40 minutes and 2 minutes. So we'll see you at that time.